I would like to thank especially our special guest coming in today, Ed Foote, who is an international caller, teacher, and entertainer. Ed has been calling since 1965. That's what, 56 years now. He's been an active member of Caller Lab for at least 45 of those years. He's attended 45 of the Caller Lab convention. He served as a committee chairman on the board of governors, on and off. Well, ever since I've heard of Ed Foote in 1981 when I started calling, and he's already been associated with Caller Lab way back then. Ed is what we would call a choreographic specialist and calls all the way through from brand new dance to C3A. In addition, he was also one of the founding fathers, so we can blame him for the challenge program, or you can praise him for the challenge program, but he's one of the founding fathers of that program. He's chaired the Caller Lab Advanced and Challenge committees, the latter one for about 30 years. The last 13 years, he's been on the Caller Lab Choreographic Review He's been the coordinator for choreographic reviews, which means almost any material published by Caller Lab goes through Ed first for smoothness, correction, that kind of stuff before it's sent out to the world. So despite being highly sought after for advanced and challenge, he's pretty much dedicated over half his calling career to basic, mainstream, and plus. He's the regular caller for at least 3 clubs in his home area of Pittsburgh. Are you still in Pittsburgh yet?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think you've been with each of those clubs over 50 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, all 3 of them over 50.
He's been a full-time caller for 48 years. He's a Caller Lab accredited coach, milestone winner. I've got about 16 pages of accolades and awards that I'm going to skip over, but the fact that there's about 16 pages of it pretty much tells you where his credentials lie, and that is everywhere when it comes to square dance. Ed's also a prolific writer on just about everything talking square dance. He used to, we've already heard talk about footnotes, but he was a regular columnist for American Square Dance magazine. He's a regular contributor to Barry Wanson. Give us a wave there, Barry. Barry Wanson is the publisher of Behind the Mic magazine, which is another international note service. And Ed has published his own note services throughout the world. They've been translated into many languages. He produces audio videos, teaching videos, dances, tapes, CDs. Well, CDs these days, we don't use tapes. With the exception of his choreography, Barry Wanson mentioned this just a minute ago. Ed is also known to be a consummate entertainer and a practical joker as far as the bad dad jokes go. I would venture that although we have some people with really bad jokes, Ed could outdo any of you. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ed still holds the record for having an entire convention boo and groan from a bad joke while laughing at the same time. And that was the Kansas State Convention, where everybody was trying not to laugh. And they were all groaning at just how bad that joke was. And I wish to God somebody can remember what the joke was. But Ed, if you remember, you can tell it. Everybody, please welcome Ed Foote.
Thank you, Mel. Well, appreciate you having me and appreciate everyone being here. Isn't it wonderful that Mel does all this work almost every week to have these seminars? I mean, this is such an unbelievable service to the square dance activity. I mean, it just kind of boggles the mind, and people from all over the world can tune in. And I mean, if he did this once a month, it'd be a wonderful thing, and he does it once a week. So that's just amazing to me. Since this is being hosted from Australia, I want to say that I really enjoyed my 2 trips to Australia. Barry Wanson was responsible for bringing me to Australia in 1996 at a 5-week tour, and part of that was a 5-day caller school up in the middle of Australia. And I see Alan Kerr's on here. He had me call for his club in Canberra, and I was up in Queensland and Melbourne and all up and down the East Coast there. So I really had a wonderful time in Australia, and I was so impressed with the ability level of the dancers in Australia. It was like the equal of Europe, which is both Europe and Australia and New Zealand have always danced far better than the United States. And so it's always a pleasure to be able to call it that at that level when I'm overseas. So I want to thank everybody in Australia for just showing me such a good time. Barry had me back in $99 for another week. So it was just wonderful. I notice we have on our list here 39 people, and it will help me if I knew the relative experience level of the people here. So I'm wondering how many have been calling 5 years or less? How would we do that? Unmute and say me, or what's the?
You could put your names up, or if anybody wants, you can just rename and just put 5, 10, or 15 next to your name. So if you've been calling less than 5 years, put a 5. If you've been calling less than 10 years, put a 10, and whatnot, just by your name. If you would all do that. So on the 3 dots, just on the top right of your picture, just rename yourself and just put a number after your name.
Now, will that show up on the picture or on that vertical list of everybody that's here?
If you see on my picture, and it'll show up on the list of participants as well. I put a 10 next to my name.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yep. I got a 5. Yeah. Okay. There's 1, 2.
Should be absolutely.
Yeah.
Mel,
Yep.
this is being recorded in public, right?
Yes, it is.
So if I put 35 years of calling there, nobody would believe I'm 37 when I tell it on stage.
Well, I was told you were 39 like George Burns, but then again, everybody claims that.
I was just
All
kidding.
right. Well, I appreciate your putting down the numbers there. That kind of helps me on this. Obviously, we have a lot more experienced callers and new callers. My presentation tonight on these different methods of site calling is going to be geared to everybody. For each method, I'll start with the very simplest approach for the newer callers, and then work up to more experienced. And when we get into questions on combining all these methods, why that'll be primarily for the experienced callers. Let me say this as we start. I encourage you to ask questions and make comments at any time. I don't want you sitting there dying to ask a question and feeling you can't ask it for an hour or so because you'll be interrupting me. It's better to ask it at the time I'm on the topic that your question is on, rather than waiting until later and people forget what we were talking about. So don't feel you're interrupting me, just jump right in. You can, I guess, on the chat room, and Mel will monitor the chat room, and or you can even unmute and just say, hey, Ed, I have a question. That's fine also. By the way, one other comment about Mel, I'm not very computer literate. So compared to most other people that he's had do these talks, he had to do a lot of preparation and set up a lot of things for me. And so I appreciate him doing that, because he probably did more for me than 10 other people combined. So he put also all the stuff he has up displayed. He did all that. So I'm really appreciative to him for that.
Just as a note, Ed, all of the documents that you'll be using and talking about, and all of the notes, are going to be available on the OC Callers website, along with the video from this session. So you can pull the notes out and have them open in front of you when you go through the video.
Great. All right. Well, we're going to talk, we're going to start off tonight talking on site calling, and we're going to discuss 3 methods of site calling. These, to me, are the 3 easiest for new callers to use, and also for experienced callers to use. Now, that's not to say that other methods don't work excuse me, as well. Basically, whatever method works for you is fine. If you're the only one using a method, but it's wonderful for you, that's great. Keep using it. Don't change. These 3 methods we're going to discuss tonight they've stood the test of time. They've stood the test of time for like 50 years. And so that says something if they've been around for that long, and ColorLab keeps publishing my write-ups on these and all. So just from having stood the test of time, they're worth considering. So we're going to start off with the facing lines site method.
I'm just looking for the document for crying out loud. Two-phase line. I've got isolated site. I must not have opened that document. 1 second.
And I assume while I'm talking, that facing lines method isn't up on the screen, right? No, people aren't accessing that while I talk. Is that correct?
No, I haven't sent anything.
And that's fine. That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah.
There's no problem with that. Okay.
Okay,
Well, let me just
so-
run through it real quick. This was, I first wrote this up. Oh, there it is. All right. I first wrote this up in 1967 because I had started out calling. I was only calling a couple years. I wanted to know how to site call. And everybody said, well, you have to call 5 or 10 years and it'll come to you. Well, I said, forget that. Don't want to do it that way. So what I'll do is I'll just sit down, and I know how to study. So I will write down every possible place the set is in, and I'll just memorize it, and then I'll be all set. And I was shocked out of my mind that after 20 minutes, I saw I had, in essence, discovered facing line site. And I couldn't believe how easy it was to site call, and nobody mentioned any of this. And I've never really claimed credit for inventing this, because at the same time I was calling in 67, there were other callers who were doing site, and I don't know how they were doing it, but they were doing site. But this is the method I started off with calling, and I just invented it really for myself, and then started putting it out at caller seminars and that kind of thing. So the key on facing line site is first you establish primary and secondary couples. I assume everybody knows these, who these are, so we don't have to spend a lot of time going into that. The trap, especially for newer callers, and all of these caller sessions, caller schools, these things that Mel puts on, we tend to designate couple number 1 as the primary and couple number 4 as the secondary. And we will do that tonight. But the trap is, don't do that when you're calling for a floor. The rule is the easiest couple in the square for you to recognize is the primary couple. So it can be couple number 1 in one square, couple number 4 in another square, and couple number 3 in another square. The basic rule is no mental effort to remember the primary couple. If you're spending mental effort to remember the primary couple, then you don't want to use that square. You go to another square. Now, if you only have 1 or 2 squares, then fine, you only have 1 or 2 squares and you should be okay. And then the secondary couple, of course, is the one to the left of the primary couple. And this will apply both the facing line site and then two-face line site. We get in that to a little bit. So we're going to start off, and we call whatever we want. And
Sorry,
you probably don't
wrong
want
document.
yeah. Mel, probably want to pull that off. Okay. So you call anything you want, and when it's time to resolve, the first thing you do is you normalize a square. That's normal boy, girl, people in like a normal ocean wave, boys in the end, girls in the middle, or normal boy, girl couples. A lot of newer callers fall into the trap and say, okay, I'm ready to resolve. I immediately look at my primary and secondary couple, even though maybe the square is in same-sex waves or lines with the girls in the middle, boys on the end, and they start looking at faces. The rule is you never look at faces until the square is normal. Basic rule, you never look at faces until the square is normal. And let me inject here by saying that before you start site calling, you should be very good at modules and isolated site that we're going to get into a little bit later. Modules and the building blocks of square dancing. I dealt with a new caller that I'd never met before. Earlier this week, he called a tip at a dance. They wanted me to evaluate him. And he could do this facing lines method. He'd only been calling like 6 weeks, but he could hold this facing lines method sheet up and read off it and he could resolve. And I was kind of impressed. He only called in 6 weeks and he could do this. So then I set him up. I got him in same-sex facing lines, boy, boy, girl, girl. And I said, all right, now resolve from here. He didn't know how to get normal from boy, boy, girl, girl lines. That's a sign that he's sight calling too soon. I told him, stop sight calling, go back to modules and practice your reading so you're comfortable on the mic, because you should be able to resolve to normalcy extremely fast. And if you can't do that, then you're too early for sight calling. All right, so once the square is normal, we get the normal facing lines, and then we get the primary couple on the left side of the line. Now, this is the ultimate in simplicity here. Granted, the experienced callers are going to say there's all sorts of other ways to do this, fine. But this is the ultimate simple method for new callers. Get them on the left side of the facing line. And as it says on the sheet here, it should take no more than 4 to 6 calls to accomplish. Newer callers will say, I don't know how to do that. I got facing lines, a normal couple. I don't know how to get them on the left. Maybe they're on the right side and they can't see that a right and left through will get them over there. Probably is a sign they're sight calling too soon. You have to know what all the calls do, what all the mainstream calls do, and know it instantly. And if you don't know that, then that means you need more work on modules. Because if you don't know that, you're going to be just throwing out calls indefinitely, and it'll take forever to get to an Alaman left. And if you get there, it'll probably be by luck. So anyway, we get the primary couple on the left, the facing lines, and then we look at the secondary girl. And she can only be with one of two people, either her original partner or her opposite. She can't be with anybody else if the primary couple has their partner. That's just the math rule. So if she has her original partner and they're right across from the primary couple, it's Alaman left right there, or memorize get out like slide through square through 3. If she's in the same line with the primary couple, then they're down on the right side, and it's star through, pass through, Alaman left. If we look at the secondary girl and she doesn't have her partner, the next 2 calls are automatic, pass through, wheel and deal. And then one of 2 calls will bring that secondary girl to the primary man. It's either centers pass through or centers square through 3. And we simply look at the center girl in the middle and say, which is it? And I always say, if she walks straight ahead, will she hit the primary boy's face? And if the answer is yes, you call pass through. And if the answer is no, you call square through 3. I'm amazed at callers that get this far and then they can't decide whether it's square through 3 or pass through. It may take them 5 or 7 seconds to decide. Well, if it takes people that long, they need more practice. And the way you overcome that is say, if the centers pass through, will that girl hit the primary man? If the answer is yes, call the pass through. If the answer is no, you call center square through 3. That's the basic method. Any questions, especially from the newer callers, on this method? Okay.
I got a hint.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you cannot see, square through 3.
Yeah. Meaning if you cannot see the corner lady, then call square through 3.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, whatever works. All of this has to work extremely fast. By the way, I'll mention now that the rule of thumb is you should be able to resolve to a left Alaman within 12 to 14 seconds from any given instant when you're calling. Now that's for experienced callers, not for newer callers, but for experienced callers, you should be able to resolve in 12 or 14 seconds from any time somebody snaps their finger. If you're in a more involved formation, it could take you 20 to 24 seconds, but that's it, never more than that. If it takes you 45 or 50 seconds to resolve to a corner and you're an experienced caller, something's wrong. And you need to go back and evaluate your thought process. All right, so that's the basic method. And I'm going to zip right on to phase 2 of this. The majority of callers in our group tonight are experienced, so I'm going to spend a lot of time there. But new callers, I don't think I'm ignoring you. And if you have any kind of question, don't feel it's not a good question. Just jump right in and ask it. Phase 2 of facing line sight is that the primary couple doesn't have to be on the left, they can be on the right. And if they're on the right, it's the same thing. Again, you look at where the secondary girl is. If she's beside the primary man on the left, then it's left Allemande right there. If she's across, it's star through, pass through, Allemande left. If the secondary girl doesn't have her partner, it's pass through, wheel and deal. But now we have to add one call. We have to add a zoom because we always want the matched pair on the outside. So after the pass through, wheel and deal, if the primary couple started on the right side of facing lines, then after the pass through, wheel and deal, we call zoom. And now we look at the center girl. Is it a pass through or is it a center square through 3? This sight calling method always works. It's infallible. It never fails. So if it does fail and you go and you know this method and you plod right through it and the method doesn't work, that means somebody in the square messed up, not you. Because this method is one of the few things in life that is infallible. Well, same with the two-faced line method. So that's our introduction to the facing lines method. The eventual goal is to be able to combine facing lines and two-faced lines and take what is ever easiest to get. And we'll get into that in a little bit after I've done the two-faced line method. Any questions on the facing line method that we've come across so far? I'm looking at the diagrams that Mel and I set up before. I don't know that we need these. If I give you, Mel, if I give you the number of the, like the facing line sight things that we set up before, can you click that, or is it better me just dictate?
I can set that up and set it up in Camination so it can work live if you want, or I can just scroll through the diagrams. Did you want to do the two-faced line method first and then look at them?
Yeah, we're going to do two-faced, because I think everybody, I mean, the facing lines method here is so simple where people can only, the secondary girl can only be one of two places and she can only have one of two men. It's pretty easy to follow. And for new callers, if you're a little bit off on this, Mel has my whole write-up on this. It's written unbelievably easy to follow. And so you can look at that later on. All right, so now let's move along to two-faced line sight. I invented this in 1975. Back in the 70s, there was a caller in the United States named Cal Golden. And in 1975, he invented a sight resolution method called the Golden Keys to Calling. And he was pushing this at his seminars and all. And this method was resolving from waves. And I thought to myself, this is too hard. Newer callers especially can't see partner relationships in waves, but they can see them in two-faced lines. So I immediately wrote the two-faced line resolution method, and that's what we're going to do here, and that's stayed around because it stood the test of time. So again, we have a primary couple, a secondary couple. We call anything we want, and once we decide to go for a corner, first we normalize the square. We have to get the square normal. Then we get the square to normal right-hand two-faced lines, which means boys on the end, girls in the center. The trap here for newer callers is that they start to think about faces too soon. You don't think of faces until you are normal and until you get to the name of the formation that you are resolving with. So here you are resolving with the two-faced line method. You look at no faces until you get in the two-face line. Once you're in a two-face line, boys are on the end, girls in the middle. We circulate the boys around the outside until they get to their original partner. That could be 1, 2, or 3. 3 is considered excessive for circulating for the boys. So if you look and say, gee, it's going to take 3 circulates for the boy to get to his partner, instead just have the girls trade, and that'll do the same thing. Once you have the primary couples together in the two-face line, you look at the secondary girl, you want her in the same line with the primary man. You don't look at her partner's face. You just look at her and you want her in the same line. If she's there, fine. If she's not there, you call couple circulate and that puts her there. Next step is automatic. You call wheel and deal. You want the primary couple on the outside of the set. If they're there, fine. If they're not there, you call right and left through and that'll put them there. And then the final step. Note there's only 6 steps in this whole thing. If the secondary girl has her partner, you call swing through, turn through, Alaman left. If she doesn't have her original partner, that's a corner box right there. You can call left Alaman immediately, or you can call any corner box get out that you have memorized. That's
that
it.
one. Missed that one.
Go ahead. Oh, Mel, do you have a comment or?
No, I said I just noticed I missed zero box. I still had corner box. All right, I still had
So
zero.
nice. My write-ups have 0 lines and 0 boxes, and he changed them all to corner line and corner box. I have to do that for my stuff, and he did it for you. That's just so wonderful. Some methods that use two-face line cite, instead of after we call the wheel and deal, or not after, instead of calling wheel and deal, they'll call Ferris wheel and centers pass through. And that's fine. You can do that, except that just adds a step. That adds another call, centers pass through. And so if you want to do that, fine. If you want a little more stalling time to check out the square, call that. I have it written up as wheel and deal because that's the fastest way, and I'm looking for the fastest way to get to the corner. That's it on the two-face line resolution, fundamental way. A trap is the newer callers sometimes get a two-face line, and the boy and the it's a left-handed two-face line. Still normal couple, boy girl, but the boys are in the middle and the girls are on the end. In a normal, it's normal couples, but it's a left-hand two-face line. Don't fall into that trap. You don't want to do that as a newer caller for this. Now, experienced callers, that's going to be no problem. But for newer callers, always have a, quote, normal two-face line, boys on the end and the girls in the middle. Comments on this? All right.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
When I looked at this several years ago, about 25 years ago, I always thought, why must it be right-hand two-face lines? If I have a left-hand two-face line with the boys in the center, that's about the same thing.
Yeah, but you're thinking Europe style and I'm writing for American style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember, Europe and Australia and New Zealand dance much higher than the US. And so I write everything I write is unbelievably simple.
Yep.
Because I want to be sure people have it. So if I was in Germany and writing it for German callers, then I would have said left-hand two-face lines are okay too.
Just as a comment here, there's been a couple of comments come in, so I'll just clarify this right off the bat. The friends and enemies method that has been described is the two-face line method. What Ed's describing is a simplified version of it. The AC-doocy method from two-face lines is also the same method. It's got a number of different names, but they all essentially are the two-phase line method. People, and as Ed said, when you see it, you can just jump in. If you see it on the fly, when you get more experience, you'll be able to jump into it from different locations and just finish it rather than set it all up. That just comes with experience.
Yeah, from two-phase lines, you can use AC/DC if you see that instead of saying boys circulate, girls trade, you call AC/DC if it's going to accomplish what you want it to accomplish. That's the next step along the way, and there are multiple steps along the way.
And the last question is the double pass through or the center box method. That is exactly the same method. Instead of calling a wheel and deal, when Ed said you call a Ferris wheel and look at it from there, it's exactly the same method. It's just taken it to a different step to give you more time. All of these are variations of this same two-phase line method. They're just under different names.
And I intentionally don't put all these variations in there because that muddies the waters for everybody.
Yeah,
So
I just wanted to clarify that because there's a lot of these comments coming out. Oh, I was taught this, I was taught that. Yes, a lot of people are taught differently, but they all come from this original method.
Right. I try to simplify everything down to the ultimate in simplicity. I feel a lot of these methods or presentations of other methods, they all work. They're all fine. If you like them, wonderful. But sometimes I'm looking at them and my eyes are glazing over and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. So if my eyes are glazing over, what does that say about newer callers? So I try to keep everything very simple when I write it. I have a basic philosophy that I have used ever since I started doing clinics over 50 years ago, and that is you don't have to be able to take the engine apart in order to be able to drive the car down the road. If you want to learn how to take the engine apart, that's fine. That'll give you all sorts of knowledge, but you don't have to spend all that time doing it. You can just jump in the car and drive. And that's my goal on these handouts and these methods, that you can just jump on the stage and call, and you don't have to take the engine apart in order to be able to call. And some of the write-ups I've seen on some methods, my eyes still glaze over. I'm supposed to know what's going on. So,
Ed?
Yeah.
I'm 100% with you. On the other hand, for newer callers, I think it gives them more time to react or to control with the Ferris wheel, especially that quite a bunch of dancers when calling wheel and deal, because doing to the space, I'd rather go sometimes into a Ferris wheel. And this, especially for newer callers, may confuse them or kind of create a little bit panic. So for newer callers, I think the Ferris wheel option would be the more convenient one.
Yeah, you can do it either way. It just adds the other step. I'm a believer also in training your mind to be highly efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, your mind is going to be forced to react very quickly if I call wheel and deal. If you call Ferris wheel and centers pass through, your mind doesn't have to react as quickly, and you can just kind of loaf along with that. And that's fine, but I would rather train someone's mind to be real sharp and then they can back off, rather than start them in the back off spot and then tell them to move up. It just seems to be more difficult that way. But we're really dealing in little nitpicky things here, because the Ferris wheel is fine. Ferris wheel and centers pass through is fine. Any other comments on the two-phase line method? All right, now we're going to move along to isolated site. And isolated site, it's good for new callers, but it's also good for experienced callers. So we're going to cover both aspects. Isolated site is a corner box. So we start off from head square through 4. That's a corner box. And we have the matched couple on the outside, and we've been saying couple number 4 is a secondary. So couple number 1 is in the middle, and boy 1 and girl 3 is in the middle, and couple number 4 is on the outside. So we have a matched couple and a mismatched couple. And we have a box of, we have a corner box, and we also have another box on the other side of the set. As long as we keep our corner box together, we can call anything we want. Just keep those dancers together. We can do a touch a quarter, we can do a scoot back, we can do a boys run, we can do a swing through, spin the top, right and left through. We can do anything you can do from a box of 4, you can call, and it'll keep that group of 4 together. And when it's time then, and you decide you want to go to a left Alaman, you just call whatever calls it takes in this little group of 4 to wind up with the matched couple on the outside, the mismatched couple in the middle, and you can call left Alaman. And it works for the whole square, because the square on the other side of the set, which you are ignoring totally, it's a mirror image of your corner box square, corner box on that side of the set. So if you get a left Alaman on one side of the set, you're going to have a left Alaman on the other side of the set. And then phase 2 of isolated sight is when you take a couple, what's known as across the street. If you draw a line vertically down the square between the head couples, between boy 1 and 3, and between boy 3 and girl 3, and between boy 1 and girl 1, and just draw a vertical line right between them. That's the line that splits the square into half. And in the vernacular that's come along, that's known as the street. So to give yourself more variety, you can take a couple across the street to the other side, play over there, and then have them come back across the street. Usually it's the head couples that go across the street and come back, but then for more variety, you can have the side couples go across the street and come back. And then phase 3, well, let me say this, you have to cross the street twice. Somebody has to cross the street twice. So when you first start out, it'll be the head couples crossing the street twice, over, play around, come back. Then the match couple, number 4, goes across, plays around, comes back. And then as you get more comfortable, couple number 1 can go across the street, play around, and then couple number 4 comes across the street to couple number 1, and you're back to your corner box, but it's on the other side of the street. And that's how we go step by step and build on the isolated sight. Isolated sight is considered ideal for newer callers because you only have to watch 4 people. You ignore the other 4 people. Where is isolated sight good for experienced callers? If you're going to sight call a singing call. If you're going to sight call a singing call, isolated sight is ideal, because we know in a singing call, we're under a time limit. Most singing calls are 64 beats in a verse. I would say 99% of all singing calls are 64 beats. And so we set up our corner box and we play around. And then when the music tells us, okay, you better go swing your corner and promenade, that corner is very close to the primary man. And then you just keep doing that each successive time. Now some callers will say, especially newer callers, will say, well, I'm afraid to sight call a singing call because I know I'm under the gun on the time limit and I don't know when to start to get out. And it may take me too long to get out, and then the whole thing is messed up because I'm not even to promenade and the music is ready to start the next figure. So here's the rule of thumb. If you are sight calling a singing call using isolated sight, you play around for the first 34 beats, and then the next 16 beats, you manipulate the square so the match couple's on the outside, mismatched in the middle, swing the corner, and you have 16 beats to promenade. If it takes you a little longer than 16 beats to get the corner, that's okay, because you got 16 beats to promenade. So you can cut that promenade short if you want, and if it takes you longer, and you're still going to be okay. Now, newer callers will say, well, where's beat 32? I'm lucky to do the singing call, let alone know where beat 32 is. Here's how you find it. pick a singing call that you know really well, and it should be a relaxed singing call, not a rousing one, but a relaxed singing call, and just listen to the music. Every 16 beats, there's a major hiccup. There's a major hiccup every 16 beats. 16 times 2 is 32. So at the second major hiccup in the music, and you can hear that if you listen for it, that's when you go for the corner. There is also a minor hiccup at the 8-beat mark. So at 8 beats, there's a minor hiccup. 16 beats, there's a major one. At 24, there's a minor one. At 32, there's a major one, and that's where you start your get up. That helps keep you confident that you're not going to just be calling figures and not knowing when to resolve. You have to know your music on the singing call. So if you're not that comfortable with the singing call or it's a new one, then don't sight call it. Use the figure that came with it or use written material, whatever. I personally, I sight call some singing calls. I have so many singing call figures that I've researched, as we determined earlier, that's the term we should use, over the years. And so I have just wads and wads of sheets of material, and I just pull out a sheet, lay it down, and just read a couple of them. And I know I'm going to get an interesting singing call figure that way. In fact, I have some sheets, after coming back from Australia, I set up some sheets that are titled Singing Call Material Too Difficult to Use in the United States. They can only use it in Europe and Australia and New Zealand. And so I'm rolling these singing call figures, and that's what I like to use a lot of times. But on the other hand, I'll sight call, I'll do some sight calling on singing calls also. Comments on isolated sight, whether for the newer caller, the experienced caller, using isolated sight for singing calls. Any comments or thoughts on this?
Ed, before we open it up, there was a comment on there that says, can you demonstrate that? So I've just put that singing call figure from if you wore a tulip in there. That's the one that came with the record. So we can take it back to that swing through, and you can just demonstrate how you can isolate or do an isolated sight.
Yeah, without hearing the music, I'm going to probably have to guess on where beat 32 is here. I know.
Unfortunately, I don't have that music.
Yeah, so it's tough to do this just this way. I'm thinking head square through, swing through twice, spin the top, boxing that right and left through. I'm thinking beat 32 is going to occur somewhere around the boxing that right and left through area. But I don't know because I'm not hearing the music.
That's your 32 there is after the spin the top.
Okay. Because I don't have, and a few callers I know would berate me for this, I don't have the number of beats for every call memorized. I am deficient in this manner, but I would think most callers don't have it memorized either. You just go along, and because you have to call to your floor, so sometimes you're going to be calling slower than the number of beats allowed. So so I don't know the beats for all of these. Now Mel's moving them through the that's the spin the top.
That's your 32 beats there.
Okay. And then I personally don't like, where'd you get this? Did you get this from the singing call itself?
Yep.
Okay. I personally don't like boxing that from an ocean wave because it gets kind of crowded in there, and girls don't like boxinets too much anyway. So I wouldn't do a boxinet here. I would do something else. I would do a boys run, girls trade, bend the line, and there's my corner box. Now, if the music tells me, I'm ready to swing the corner. Boy one is ready to swing, girl four is the corner. Now, if the music tells me you got here too early. You not only have 32 beats for the promenade, you got like 40. Then, can we go back to the corner box there? Corner box. Bend the line. Yeah, okay. So if I realize I'm early, then I just stall around. So how would I stall around here? I would call pass through, U-turn back and swing. And that's taken up this extra time, and that then I'm back on schedule for the time. Get back to the corner box again. Okay, let's say I'm at the corner box and for some reason the dancers have been slow, or I've had to slow down because the dancers are slow. And so now I'm late. Now I'm late. Well, what I'm going to say doesn't really apply here. If swinging the corner here is the fastest way to go. Here's another stall. I said pass through, U-turn back, swing. That's one stall. I can do another stall. I can do a swing through, go. Swing through, Mel. Boys trade. And now I can decide. Now I can either swing the corner or swing the person beside me right here, or I can have boys run, go, boys run, boys fold, and swing and promenade. So once you get, that's the beauty of the isolated box, isolated site for singing calls, because your corner is never very far away from the person you want to swing, your primary person. So if you're early, you can stall around. And if you aren't early, you just swing them and promenade. Any questions on that? If you try this method at home, invariably newer callers or even experienced callers trying this for the first time, they'll find that at beat 32, it takes them too long to get to the swing the corner spot. And so that's just experience. Once you get to beat 32, you can't call a big spin chain exchange of gears or something like that. You have to just play around with your box of 4 very quickly because you are under the gun of this time limit. Comments on this use of isolated site?
There's no more questions.
And I think because we have so many experienced callers here, I think I don't think much of what I'm saying is new for the experienced callers here.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah. Oh, Alan.
Hi, Ed. How are you? Nice to see you, man. That's why I often give an exercise to say, okay, write as many little figures as you can that take only a few beats that you can use from the corner box. So that way you're forearmed with a whole lot of ideas of how you can use the calls they know from the corner box if you're citing the singing call. So you can shorten it or you can lengthen it, and that works well as well. And you could, the one you just did, you could just have the girls turn back and half circulate and bend the line if you're really, really late. So having that sort of stuff at your hands is a good move. So that's practice that ahead of time.
Yeah, I'd be worried that people over here would know, the girls would know how to half circulate. So you're Australia. You're up there in calling heaven, and I'm in the United States. I'm in sort of purgatory. So have to call it who I got. So I would never call girls half circulate because that would get the girls over here, get them all nervous. Where's half circulate? They just kind of wander around. But that is a good figure.
Yeah, just as a note, in the material that Ed has provided for these sessions that will be available on the website, he has also provided a rather extensive list of some very short sequence modules from the corner box, the partner line. These are our get out modules, easily convertible into swing your corners, but at the mainstream and the plus level from corner boxes, partner lines, and I believe, if I'm correct, across the street boxes as well. So there are a lot of very short modules play around with to get yourself started with these if you're not really comfortable with your own site calling. Just the little fillers that Ed was talking about. So he's already graciously provided a lot of those, and that'll be in the documentation.
You know, I provided get out sheets, and that's how I site call. When I'm ready to resolve, and really the further along the program is, the more I use these things. At Advanced and Challenge, I have get out sheets laying on the table beside me. One is for zero, say I'm calling an A2 dance. I have zero partner line get outs, out of sequence, corner box get outs, and they're laying there. So when I start to resolve, and as I recognize where I am, I glance down at one of these sheets and pick one. And I got tons of these things. So that guarantees me that I'm always going to be fresh and not repeating things. If I just plotted through with the basic formula every time, why people get really bored with that. And even at Mainstream and Plus too. At Mainstream and Plus, I have these get outs laying down there. And depending on the ability level of the group, I'll glance down and pick one of these. I don't want to say this. So that's what Mel, those are some of the sheets I provided for Mainstream and Plus. I haven't provided any for Advanced, but there are get out sheets for Mainstream and Plus that Mel has that he'll post. And so that's what I provided. What I want to do here is, and this will be for the experienced callers, I want to start out and we'll have a square set up, and then we'll just start to call and people can shout out whatever calls they want. And at some point we'll stop and I'll show you what my thought process would be to resolve. And I do this because that's what is requested a lot of times at these seminars that I do. They say, that's fine to have all this down, but we want to know how you think. What's your thought process when you're ready to resolve after having called a bunch of material? How do you think? So we're going to do that here a couple times, and we'll give several calls, and then I'll show you how I would resolve. Now, some of you would obviously have other ways that you could resolve that might even be better than mine. I want you to share those because then we'll all benefit from that. So let's have the heads.
One second, Ed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the top of the hour right now. So I know some of you have other commitments that you need to go to. Ed is going to be sticking around for a while. We're going to be looking at terminations and looking through these processes. And Ed, if you want to stick around and go through the Dixie Grand, or we can reschedule that to another time.
I'll go 2 or 3 hours, no problem.
Sorry?
I'll go 2 or 3 hours, there's no problem. Yep. I was going to do this on the site calling before I did the Dixie Grand.
Absolutely. I kind of figured you would, but I was just giving the option.
Yeah, some people have to leave early. All the Dixie Grand stuff will be on the Orange County website.
Yep.
This whole thing will be on it. Okay, so let's start with a corner box. All right, so now, so it doesn't look like I'm setting up a pre-memorized thing. Why don't just different people call out different calls? We'll do 4 or 5 calls and then we'll resolve.
Okay, so Yolanda, give us a call. You'll have to unmute yourself.
I would say square through 2, bend the line, star through, you have a box.
Yeah, I'm just going through the list as they are on my thing, so we'll do this a couple of times. So Yolanda?
Swing through.
Michael, Braithwaite?
Boys run.
A boy run.
Bill Silver?
Couple circulate.
John Casey?
Ferris wheel.
Don't try and resolve, just move the dancers. And Malcolm? unmute yourself to talk, please.
Pass 30.
That good for you, Ed?
Yeah, that's good. So obviously here, what we're trying to do is we take the best of facing lines and two face lines, and we may start off with one and bail out to the other, or vice versa, or we just jump in the middle or end of one of these methods of facing line or two face line. And that's what we're going to do here. We know that facing lines says we're going to have the match couple on the outside, the mismatched couple on the inside. And when we have that, it's either if centers pass through or centers square through 3. So obviously here, it's a pass to the center, centers pass through, out man left. So this is kind of a little too easy because that's kind of obvious there. And when the centers can pass through, out man left.
We also do a pass through trade by.
Yeah, right. Pass through trade by. And okay, let's call some more and then make it tougher.
There you go.
Okay, so from here, what I see, and I'll just say the first thing I see offhand, boys trade, Ferris wheel, centers wheel around. That's what it's going to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let me set up one that's going to be harder. Or Mel, are you doing one?
Yeah, I'm just doing what's in the chat here. A few people have sent a couple sequences in, so I'm just writing them out.
Ouch.
It's not the way it was called, but it's the only way Combinations can set it up.
Oh, okay.
All right, so if I was resolving from here, first thing, you got to normalize. So 2 things come to mind. Boys run, but since I call advanced, I think quarter through. Oh no, wait a minute. I misread the thing. Forget that.
Knee hinge.
Yeah, ends cross fold. Ends cross fold normalizes. And now centers pass through. Swing through, boys trade, girls turn back and promenade home. Boys trade, girls turn back and promenade home.
Not resolved.
Nope.
And I could have said boys trade, box and that, pull by. I could have, once I got them all, once I'm in. Oh, wait a minute. I messed it up. I went to sleep. I failed my own test. I failed.
Yeah, Ferris wheel and Zoom.
Bill Silver is not going to like me anymore.
You did it on purpose.
Now, getting back to where I said I failed, we were in that left-hand two-face line. Yeah, like that. All right. From here, I just went to, I was reading boy 4 as girl 4. So from here, one call gets me a get out, and we'll be talking later on Dixie Grand. I love Dixie Grands. I just drool over them. I think we ought to use
I actually thought that's what you were trying to set up there for the segue.
Yeah, from here, Ferris wheel Dixie Grand gives you a left saddle man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With the newer callers, you don't have to worry how I saw that. We're going to get into the steps on that. And of course,
How do I play?
I just love Dixie Grand.
I love Dixie Grand. Yeah.
All right, let's do another one since I failed that one.
Sorry, I'm just reading I don't know if I can set that up.
Let's do this. Let's look at more different. Head star through. Outsides, half sachet, centers pass through.
Computer's not as fast as my typing.
And slide through. So we have an inverted line. So from here, if I'm calling plus, the thing that I see is the ends fold, peel off, and bend the line. If I'm calling mainstream, I would do ends fold and centers in and cast off 3/4 and star through, and that's going to have me normalized. Once I do the star through, then I'll look and see where I am. So let's do the simple one, the mainstream, ends fold.
Oh, sorry.
Cast off 3/4. While they're casting, I'm looking and seeing what's going on. Cast off 3/4. I see ones are going to be facing, so it's star through.
Wait a minute. Didn't you say ends fold?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said ends fold, centers in. I typed ends run, sorry. Does the same thing, but I'll do it.
What about the ends just pass through? You're normalized.
I would never call ends run in the US. It would never happen.
No, but the ends pass through from this formation.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it would never happen in the US? I'm from the US and I'm getting kind of offended.
Well,
one of the things, the reason that's being said, Linda,
Yeah.
is depending on where you are in the US, we often hear comments of, if you call that in this state, or if you call that in this area, all the squares would break down or go home, or we don't call that. The US is a mixed bag of exceptionally good dancers to very, very plain vanilla dancers to no variety dancers, and there's no consistency on what works and what goes. So if you go from Texas to Arkansas, you're going to be calling two completely different styles of dancing depending on what club you are, and that can even vary across the city. That's why it said that as a generalization. It's not meant to be offensive.
When I call in the US, mainstream or plus, I never call ends run. If I would call an ends run, I'm either going to get an ends trade or an ends cross run. I'm rolling the dice, and I never want to roll the dice. So I always call what's sure, and sure is ends fold, because they can't really mess that up too much.
And the reason I typed ends run is because that's just from knowing it, that Combinations does not like when you're in a tight inverted line and ends fold into the center. I don't know why it doesn't. That's why I call ends run. If you do ends fold, centers in, it'll take it.
Could we go back to after the slide through? What about if you would call the ends pass through, we would get normal lines facing out.
Yeah, but here, all right, do
that
the
seems to be the simplest one.
Do the ends pass through. The problem with the ends pass through is what's the next call?
Bend the line.
Ooh.
Wheel and deal.
First of all, I don't like bend the lines because bend the line is a square stopper. Anytime you call bend the line, the entire dance comes to a momentary stop and then it resumes. Basic rule of thumb, the more bend the lines you have, the less smooth your dance is. So I don't want to call bend the line unless I really have to, or if I'm calling for a real weak group that needs it. So from here, I could call California twirl, except girl number 1 has forward momentum on boy number 4. So the California twirl might not be as smooth unless I stop and pause before it, but then that stop, start calling. I don't want to do that. So that's why I don't call ends pass through there.
What about a wheel and deal, Mel?
It's the same kind of thing. You've got that stop action for the, in this case, the side boys. They're doing a tight turn while the others didn't.
The wheel and deal wouldn't be as bad. The wheel and deal would be better, actually. Wheel and deal would be better.
What about cast off 3/4?
Mel, go back there a second. Go back. Okay. This is something that I'm always cognizant of, and where any dancers that are having problem, notice that when the ends pass through, the dancer's orientation is in a box setup. So it's like north-south. And then if I call wheel and deal, the dancer's orientation immediately has to shift to east-west. They have to look at their line. Some dancers can't make that change in orientation.
I heard someone make a suggestion of cast off 3/4.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you don't want that, because the forward momentum for girl 1 is forward. She's going to have to grind to a halt and have boy 4 start up. So I would never call cast off 3/4.
Okay.
No.
If they're passing in the middle, it works because it's a push. But when you got ends and they both have to cast away, it's
Yeah.
forward, stop, and pivot.
Now, something that would work nice would be the ends pass through, which we've done, and then the ends fold, star through, California twirl, and now you have standard lines, California twirl, and then
Reverse the flutter.
well, what I would do here is
Start.
I'm again following my 14-second rule. I'm always looking to get out fast. For at a very simple level, I would call star through, centers, California twirl, centers, pass through. Otherwise, I would probably always call slide through, because that's going to pair up my primary. Another thing I could do would be slide through, right and left through, pass through, trade by. And that dances me into the corner a little bit better.
If I can just take us back a step, Ed.
Yep.
When you looked at the facing line or the two-face line, looking at it on this way, one of the things that you noted was in each case, you're pairing up a primary couple. If they're paired in facing lines, it's easy. If not, then you get them into the pairing situation. You can get them in that two-face line, and then you move the paired couple to the outside. Facing, whenever you have your key couple or your primary couple facing each other on the ends, it's always easy to work that box resolution or that two-face line after the wheel and deal part. What are you going to do next?
This is a case where,
and that is all you're doing, is just going to that step immediately.
we went to facing lines here, and then if we like the two-face line get out better, we could bail out the two-face lines from our facing lines. It would be past the ocean, swing through, and the boys run. Boys run. Well, I'll show you a couple of things here. Obviously, it's following two-face line method. It's Ferris wheel, center, square through 3. You don't have to run them through that. I think everyone can do that. Ferris wheel, center, square through 3. Here's a neat get out that I like when I have a setup like this. Do a couple circulate. If I can see it on the fly while I'm going, I see I have the primary couple together. They're the trailing couple, and girl number 4, my corner is in the same line. When I see this setup at advanced, I call turn and deal, pass through, right and left grand. At mainstream or plus, I can't use turn and deal. So instead I use, what did you just, get back here.
Tag face right.
Yeah, I do half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand, and I do it directionally.
Right.
But now bring it back to where we were, back to that thing again. Yeah, like that. So when I've done this at seminars and I give people this, the half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand, and then people come up on the mic, and if it's set up like this, I'll say, why don't you try this one time? What they'll do and you don't have to move the checkers on this. They'll say half tag, pause, face right, pause, pass through right and left grand. Well, that's no good. To build excitement on this, you have to maintain your voice level on a steady laser beam thing. You don't drop your voice like we do pass through bend the line or star through, your voice drops, or half tag and your voice drops. Instead, you have to maintain a laser beam level mental picture and say everything extremely fast. You can have no pauses because all three of those calls are very quick. So the way I would call it would be half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand. It builds steady, and the dancers respond to that, and I get a good response from the dancers. But if I just said half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand, it just falls off the end of the table and doesn't create excitement. Okay, any comments on that?
Yeah, you said something about fast get out. I've seen something after the California twirl, which would be probably a neat thing to go for.
And where was
go back?
Go back.
Yeah, would be like center space, everybody star through, sides back away.
That's good. If you can see that, you get an A. If you can,
Yeah.
if you can see that on the fly with no pause, then you are impressive. But we know you're impressive. You're calling 35 years. I've seen your name all over the place. So obviously it doesn't surprise me.
Thanks for the flowers.
Well, no, you make comments on this stuff on Color Lab all the time. So I'm seeing your comments in there on committee work.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to do any more of this of what do we see in the middle? Do we bail out to this or that kind of thing? Have we seen enough of that? Do we want to go on to Dixie Grand, or do we want to do one or two more of these things?
Let's go to Dixie Grand.
All right.
I do have a question, Ed.
Yeah.
On that last thing where Michael saw that thing, would he see the same thing if the people didn't have numbers on them? I mean, that's the part that gets me is.
Well, right.
You're looking at this, you're seeing all the numbers, but looking at this without with the numbers is one thing, but seeing real people, would you recognize that quick with real people?
Michael.
Yes, I do. Because I learned my calling with working with senior people, which were 90% or even 95% women. And so I had to figure some kind of way out to remember. And I have quite unique thing to remember faces. Even the test of time I made when I called in Japan, which was really a nice, experience. And I very much enjoyed it. But yes, this is a thing you have to remember, and you got to see it on the fly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
As
on the other hand, I used to call 5 to 7 days a week, so the experience, I guess, gives you the opportunity to seize that on the fly. Not everything, but very often. Yeah.
Can you put
go ahead, Ed.
Where we were after that California twirl? Yeah, the fact that he can see that the centers are partners, that he can look north south when the slide through for the primary couple is east west, and he can see that all at once so he doesn't lose timing. That's very sharp thinking, and not everybody can do that.
Yeah, what I wanted to say in that is there's a big difference to calling to checkers and calling to a caller program and calling to live dancers. Right at the beginning of Ed's presentation, it says determine your primary couple, and that is the couple that stands out in your mind, whether they're a married couple that were arguing when they came in the hall and that's why they stand out, or they're wearing the same color, that's why they stand out. Whoever they are, the reason it's easy on this, the computer programs or checkers are there to corroborate your choreography and your techniques. The reason I put the numbers on is because I color them the same way my checkers at home are colored. Other people have the red couple as couple number one. Other people have different colors as couple number one. I just put it on for simplicity because if I hadn't done that, and Ed might have couple number one is red on his checkers. So he's looking at the red couple and the blue on the side. So I just put the numbers on just for the sake of clarity. It's very different with live dancers. Absolutely, John.
Could we go back to after the ends pass through?
The thing that I noticed, but if I could just interrupt, is that your primary man is standing where if he's close to home, and if you star through, he's going to be at home. And so you can then change your thrust about, don't worry about doing stuff with the centers. Let's have the ends star through and the centers do something different. So that's how I would attack this as a resolution. I suddenly say, okay, let's leave him at home and then solve the others. That'd be the
because it could go ahead and have the centers roll away while the ends star through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would not do a centers roll away with that.
You do a centers.
I do a half sachet, but not a roll away.
Or I would call girls roll the boys away to center, but yeah.
Yeah.
And to square through 3, swing your partner and you're home.
Square through 3?
Centers.
Oh, centers square through 3. And you still want the couple number one to do the slide through.
Everybody swing your partner and you're home.
You mean from here, call everybody swing your partner?
Oh,
then I probably have to say
that's a
original partner.
Centers square through 3.
Original partner.
And step ahead, swing your partner. You're there, or swing your partner. Yeah.
Everybody step ahead and swing your partner.
Yeah.
Just have the head star through and the sides back up, and you're home.
Yeah. As Ed said initially, the more you practice and with experience, the more you're going to see hundreds of thousands of these things jumping out at you from all over the place. The idea is to get that basic technique, either facing lines or the two-face line method. And from there, everything will build, and you're going to see shortcuts and details. And then a lot of that is in the notes that he's got as well. He skimmed over it quickly here because there's a lot of experienced callers, but he has got it in good detail in the notes for the newer callers as well.
For the experience, I'd like to share one if we could go back to after the ends pass through. Let me see. No, we had a corner set up before somehow, where everybody had the corner and we had the lines facing up. It's not this one.
I think we would slide through was the end of it. So the ends pass through. There you go. Is that what you wanted?
Oh no.
This is the only one that we've done with the inverted lines.
No, then
like slide through.
Then it was probably the one.
I think the one that you're thinking of is one of the ones before, and I have no idea what the choreography was on that anymore. All right, so.
All right, well, we had a request to go on to Dixie Grand, so let's do that. There have only been, there have been 3 papers written on Dixie Grand, and the one that's here, it's 5 pages long, and it's the most complete on Dixie Grand. There was an earlier one written about 5 years ago that was real brief, and then there's another one as part of the handout here is Mel's has displayed in there from Dean Rath, who's a new caller in Pittsburgh here with me, and but he thinks like a European and an Australian, so he's diagrammed some Dixie Grand things, and so that's posted too. The reason I like Dixie Grand, it's forward ongoing motion. It's forward ongoing motion. The dancers love it, and they don't hear it that much. And the reason they don't hear it that much is most callers don't know how to work it into their choreography. So most callers, I think, have 2, 3, or 4 Dixie Grand figures pre-written out. They call them and they say, fine, now I've done my Dixie Grand duty for tonight. I don't have to think about it till next week. The nice thing about Dixie Grand is, again, the dancers love it, and you are never more than 12 seconds away from a Dixie Grand get out. Almost any time in your calling. That's what makes it beautiful. You don't have to wait for the setup to magically appear. You can even force it to appear with very few calls. So I'm going to give you the setups here, and then we'll look at some of this. Now, let's first look at the traditional thing of Dixie Grand. So let's have squared set, Mel, and
Do you want terminations
Want
up?
me to put earphones on?
yeah. What was that on earphones?
No, never mind.
I said, did you want the terminations up?
Combinations, yeah. The traditional one that has come down for decades is 4 ladies chain. Heads roll away. Circle left.
Yep.
And then reverse back single file.
Yep.
Yep.
Can we do that, or?
Yeah, it just doesn't do that circle, a reverse back, and then lead dancer turn back.
Oh, really?
So I just set it up that way.
Oh, okay. And then the boys turn back, and those who can start a Dixie Grand, and it's in the circle. It's
Come on.
having everybody started here.
I'm sorry, I'll slow that down. No.
You didn't have it the way it was written. Yeah.
You got 4 ladies chain. I gotta get rid of this bloody thing here. And then you had a circle left.
Heads roll away.
It's half set.
Okay. Then came a circle left, reverse back, single file.
Single file.
Yep. And then everybody turn back, face partner.
Boys turn back.
Sorry, boys turn back, I should say.
Yeah. Can we do single file, or don't they know that?
Let's go.
Did terminations go to class?
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Boys turn back. Those who can start Dixie Grand. So it's right pull by, and everybody left, everybody right, Alaman left.
Yes.
That's the traditional use. That was in use when I first came into square dancing. And then the flip of that is you can set it up, and it's in the material here where the girls turn back and those who can start a Dixie Grand. And then you can also do it where everybody starts at the same time. You're ready for a wrong way grand with your opposite, and everybody does a Dixie Grand, right, left, right, Alaman left. By the way, let me say that 99.5% of the time, Dixie Grand ends with an Alaman left. You don't have to, and a few callers have written material where they don't have to. The dancers, because this is such a great get out, I only use it to a left Alaman. I don't use it any other time. You can, but that makes it seem more like work. So now let's get on to the formulas where you can sight call Dixie Grand. At any time. There's a little thing about fun with dancers on Dixie Grand, and that where the dancers shout out right, left, right as the caller says Dixie Grand. And that's being done all around the country in the US. I don't, is that done in Australia or Europe where they shout it out?
Callers do sometimes.
Yeah. Here, if we tell our dancers that the rule is you're supposed to shout it out, they immediately start shouting. And so as the caller says right, left, right, everybody in unison goes right, left, right, and they get a kick out of that. All right, so in the handout, there are 6 setups for sight calling Dixie. In fact, first of all, let's flip it a little. Let's do the module caller one first, because that comes first in our order of learning here. So let's have the head star through, centers right and left through,
Yeah.
So for module callers, anytime centers can pass through Alaman left, instead you can call double pass through Dixie Grand. Go ahead, let's do that. Double pass through Dixie Grand. And you should memorize that. Everybody should have that memorized, because we just saw from the facing lines get out, facing lines method at its simplest. You're often going to have centers pass through Alaman left or center square through 3. So if it's centers pass through Alaman left, instead call double pass through Dixie Grand. If it's center square through 3, you can say centers right and left through, and then double pass through Dixie Grand. So that's one of the things to memorize, and that's for module callers. That works great. Now heads. Side ladies chain. Head star through and right and left through. Oh, what did I do? I messed that up. And center ladies chain. Okay, so this is the parent setup for sight calling Dixie Grand. This is what I call the ultimate basic position, which is primary couple in the middle, secondary girl behind, nut with partner. And it's Dixie Grand. And
sorry, Ed, my computer is acting really, really weird. I don't know why it's doing this. I honestly do not know why it's doing this, but I seem to have lost Taminations for some reason. So give me 1 second and I will get it back up.
Well, I'll just mention this, people listen in, because we didn't have to see this on Taminations. We saw it. Primary couple in the middle, secondary girl behind, nut with partner. And you should memorize that, because that's the parent position for sight calling Dixie Grand. And then the flip side of that.
Sorry, what did you want? Primary couple in the middle?
Heads back out to the right, heads lead right in California twirl. So this is the parent position, and we don't have to walk them through the Dixie Grand. That this is just what it is. Now the flip of this is secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. So let's have the girls zoom wherever, well.
There you go.
Yeah, all right, very good. All right, so secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. And it's a Dixie Grand, you don't have to run them through it. So the beauty of knowing these two things is that any time as you're calling along, two couples have their partner and two couples don't, you're 1, 2, 3 calls at the most away from doing a Dixie Grand. So that's how you can work Dixie Grand into your calling all the time. And if it's not like this, it's centers pass through, Alaman left. So those 3 are key to be able to sight call Dixie Grand, and you definitely want to memorize them. And in the handout, where is it in the handout here? That's 1, 2.
God's sake.
That's number 1 and number 2 in the handout. The centers double pass through Dixie Grand. That's under the module thing in the handout. So here's another couple things to memorize, or definitely have written down so you refer to it, from a corner box. So let's get a corner box.
Yeah, just easier way.
Pass through. And you don't have to move the checkers through this, but it's a Dixie Grand from right here. Anytime you have a corner box, you can call pass through Dixie Grand. So unpass through it. Does it recognize that command? Okay. Oh, that you just go back. Or from a corner box, you can say slide through, go ahead. Square through 4. Dixie Grand. Notice Dixie Grand is always starting with our opposite. Remember, that's the way it was in the circle. We started with our opposite, and it's the same thing applies here.
There is one further from the corner box, Ed, and that's just have the ends circulate. The boys circulate Dixie Grand.
So
that's true. And let me make 2 comments on that. First of all, well, you mean a corner box ocean wave?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's do a step to a wave. Okay. Unstep to a wave. Untouch. Okay. When I call, I never say step to a wave, because I consider that kerplunk calling. Step to a wave, stop, then the next call, kerplunk, kerplunk. So I never say step to a wave. I may want an ocean wave for a Dixie Grand, but I never sacrifice the dancers for my pleasure. So I never say step to a wave. But what Alan said, this knowledge that Dixie Grand from a corner box wave, you can use this wonderfully. And you don't have to move the checkers through this, but we're in a corner box and pretend you call a relay the deucey. Okay, and relay the deucey, it's going to end up right back here. And we know that at the end of a relay the deucey, the boys are moving up on the outside of the set. So as you're watching the square and you see the boys moving up, you can say, boys, right here, boys circulate Dixie Grand. They don't end up right here on a relay the deucey, they end up back 1. Yeah.
It doesn't like doing a relay the deucey from facing couples. There you go.
Yeah. So as we're finishing the relay the deucey and the girls are doing the cast 3/4, if you're very alert, you see as the girls are casting 3/4 and the boys are moving, you say before the girls finish their cast 3/4, Boys circulate once Dixie Grand, Alaman left. You need to raise the volume of your voice so that your voice propels the dancers through the call. If at the end of the relay the deuce, you just say boys circulate once Dixie Grand, it's not going to fly because half the dancers won't hear it. They'll think you're still directional calling to relay the deuce or something like that. So whenever you want something a little unusual, you have to raise the volume of your voice to propel the dancers, like with their hand in the dancer's back, you're pushing them forward. And this dance is like a charm. The dancers will go, ooh, if you call this with the correct timing, the relay the deucey, boys circulate, Dixie Grand. And there's some other things in there on Dixie Grand, a couple other from facing lines, in sequence, partner lines out of sequence. I give you 6 setups for Dixie Grand, plus that module one of anytime centers can pass through, it's a double pass through Dixie Grand. If you memorize just 3 or 4 of these, you can start throwing in Dixie Grands anytime during the course of the night. So let's show you an example here. Mel, can we square up and then, or let's hold it right there, a 0 line or a partner line, right there. So now let's say I'm into the 4th tip and I realize I haven't called a Dixie Grand. And so I want to do this because I want to call a bunch of them during the night. So I know that Dixie Grand means 2 people have their partner, 2 people have their opposite. Here, let's say I have facing lines, everybody has their partner. I want to intentionally get 2 people without their partner. And how do I do this? AC-deucey. Because AC-deucey always keeps 2 people with the same person and 2 people with the opposite person. So if I call past the ocean and AC-deucey, that's the ocean AC-deucey. Now I'm ready for Dixie Grand get out. So see, I look, I don't even know who's going to be paired until I'm into it. So I see it's 4 is going to be paired. So let's do a recycle. Right and left through. Pass to the center or dive through. And then we're going to freeze it here. Don't move them. Remember we said one of the setups was secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind, not with partner. Well, we see we're all set for this. All we have to do is say centers right and left through, and we're ready for our Dixie Grand. But there's a better way. Instead of saying centers right and left through Dixie Grand, that works, but it's not as smooth as saying center square through and on the 3rd hand start a Dixie Grand. That dances like a charm. And I'm always looking for that. Anytime I never want to say center right and left through, it gets kind of glummed up in the middle. So I say center square through and on the 3rd hand Dixie Grand. It dances wonderfully. The dancers never see it coming, and they'll pay you more. Any comments here on Dixie Grand? I encourage you, if you aren't calling Dixie Grand 10 or 12 times a night, to consider doing that because the dancers love it. Get them to shout out the right, left, right in loud, very loud. As you do it, have them do it with you. It's a big fun thing for the dancers. It goes over wonderfully. At a festival, it goes over great anytime you get the dancers shouting things out like this.
Ed,
yep.
Would you like to comment how for the newer callers, how they would call it at basics or mainstream?
I was just about to ask a question about that, about mainstream version of that.
Well, you'd have to call it directionally. You can't call it basic or mainstream using the word Dixie Grand. So let's have the, let's get back to our 0. Well, have the side ladies chain. And the heads lead right and centers California twirl. Remember we said this is our parent position. So if I want to call Dixie Grand, and I don't want to use the name, I can say right pull by, everybody left pull by, everybody right pull by, Alaman left. Now I got to say it with good timing, and you got to raise the volume of your voice because the dancers may not believe you. Anytime I think the dancers may not, or some of the dancers even may not believe me, I raise the volume of my voice to make sure they know that I mean what I say. So
my question was just right quick on that. What you just said with the right pull by, left pull by there. What my question was going to be is, would it be proper for me to say, like, for instance, centers start in 8 chain 3? Would that work? Or is that proper?
I've never
Centre start a wrong way grand would be better. And on the
Gotcha.
fourth hand, left Alaman. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start at 8 chain 3. Now, see, you can get away with that where you are. If I called that, everybody would say, I don't believe you said that, so I'm going to play it safe and I'm going to do nothing. So I couldn't get away with that. But it's great. It's great choreography. It's good. I mean, it's good creative choreography.
If you were going to do that, and I have heard that called, mind you, it was in Europe, but I heard centers start 8 chain 3, right, everybody left, or right, left, right. The words are the same instead of calling Dixie Grand. It's centers start 8 chain 3, right hand, left hand, right. It's the same thing with the prompting to do the same thing. So dancers will adapt to it very quickly once they know what you're after.
I like that centers start in 8 chain 3, and I'm going to call that for my advanced club next week after they've paid.
Well,
but it is nice. That's good creative stuff. Like that goes over well here in advance.
From an opposite lady box, you can do an 8 chain 3.
Yeah, right.
And a Dixie Grand.
4 ladies chain and the heads move to the corner and then 8 chain 3, because everybody, Dixie Grand always starts by pulling by with the opposite.
You need lady box out of sequence.
You want a 4 ladies chain and then the heads pair off.
That's what I did.
Oh, no. That's wrong. Everybody plays in their corner, so they're opposite. So it's 4 ladies chain 3/4. 4 ladies chain 3/4.
Oh, you want to? Okay, I know what you want now. I'm just going to use the basic and mainstream.
And the basic and mainstream, you can use this as an opener. Head square, 4 ladies chain, head square through 4, everybody right pull by, left pull by, right pull by.
Yeah, but you would have the courtesy turn on the outside dance. You'd lose the pull by action more or less.
Yeah, the first time you're going to have to directionalize, say everybody left pull by. If you say right pull by, everybody left pull by, the out and throw in outside to be sure to face it. All you have to do is do that once, and then they'll get it.
I think in basic and mainstream that probably wouldn't work that well. I think in basic and mainstream, if you want to do it, it'd be best to work out of ocean waves and call it directional, because then you've got them already in a kind of a circle movement working around with the right hand, left hand. If you start with the opposite, you will pull partner by. I've analyzed it and I've worked with it. If you can see it on the fly that everybody's in sequence, and you got the boys on the outside, you always can start Dixie Grand when starting with the opposite and getting to the corner. If it is a side lady for the head boy, then you may as well do an Alaman left with another head lady and come back with go forward 2 and courtesy turn your partner promenade. So if you can see that everybody's in sequence, you start, I'm talking about head now, okay? If the heads start with the heads, they will get to the side to the corner. and you need the boys on the outside and the girls on the inside. Now I turn it the other way around, and if have the boys on the inside and the girls on the outside, would work the same way. If the head boys would start with the side lady, the right-hand lady, you would come back with a Dixie Grand to a do paso, which is another left-hand action.
Yeah.
If you understand, but you got to see the sequence status on the fly.
Yeah. Well, Ed already said that a Dixie Grand can end in a number of different ways. He just likes, he prefers doing it to an Alaman left because it's something that the dancers do prefer. I know in Europe you do that. My curiosity question in that is why are we trying to complicate what is essentially, if we're in a double pass through, or even in an 8-chain 4 box or an opposite box, 8-chain 3 or 8-chain whatever, and not do the courtesy? Why don't we just say those who can, right pull by, left pull by, right pull by? The dancers are going to adjust to the circle, or keep it simple like that, or start right hand, left hand, everybody pull by, right hand, right hand, or wrong way grand is what was said.
Automatically turn.
Yeah.
I can go with the wrong way grand, but
yeah, the Dixie Grand is designed to end in a circle formation, not in a box formation, which is what you get in the 8-chain 3 because of the courtesy turn.
Right.
If I'm calling a plus dance, but it's for weak plus dancers, and if I try to use some unusual Dixie Grand, it becomes a Dixie awful. And so I tend not to. Once I get to where I'm very close to the corner, I don't want to even have them consider breaking down. I want to give them their carrot.
Yeah.
Just a question about the definitions, and so far I've seen you do Dixie Grand from a double pass-through formation or a trade-by formation. Is that actually according to the definition, or is it a way that we could do it?
The definition's on the screen.
Yeah, the rounding, the corner on the outside is built in to the. See at the end there, it says the formation converts to a circle.
Yeah, but if you do a double pass-through, are the outsides actually, according to the definitions, allowed? Should they do it automatically, or?
No, if you the first time you call that, you're going to have to say outside start Dixie Grand,
Fine.
and then you'll do it. The second time you call it, you don't have to say that because they'll know.
Yep. Fine with me. I use it all the time, but it just it's not quite as the definition says.
Yeah, it's one of those technicals. What you're talking about is when you're in a trade by formation and you call it Dixie Grand, there's nothing in the definition that states they turn a quarter into face. That's not there. That's just one of the nuances that it ends in a circle.
They should get it.
Yes, they should get it, but you are right. That's a technical glitch in the actual definition. It doesn't say outsides face or those who can turn to face if you're not already facing. But it's one of those that's been written that way for so long, it's taken that way. And Color Lab has not cleared up that technical aspect of the definition. It does, however, say that any formation where at least 2 dancers can start with the right pull by, and if you put yourself in a trade by and you say ends pull by the definition of your trade by and your dance action, that turning towards each other is an automatic reaction. So it's already incorporated as part of the definition. It's just not clear.
But we should be aware. We should be aware of it if we use it.
Let me add here too, this Dixie Grand handout, the first 3 pages is all formulas and how to site call it and that kind of thing, and neat little ways to do it. And then the last 2 pages is 20 quick examples of Dixie Grand that you can just, they're really, they're modules or just material, Dixie Grand material that has maybe anywhere from 3 to 8 calls, and then it's an Alaman left, and everyone ends with the Dixie Grand to an Alaman left. So there's 20 things in there where you can just, it's prepared material for you, and the Alaman lefts come really fast because none of the figures are very long.
Ed, do you do it from an Alamandar formation?
Yeah, if you had, well, Alabama. Oh,
Like-
yeah, you'd have to have the girls in the middle and the boys. Well, it's a wrong way there.
Yeah, like, so say a 4 ladies chain, Alaman left, all 8 spin the top into a Dixie Grand.
Right. Yep. Anything else on Dixie Grand?
Do you want an example of how to do it? Half the shade and ending with a do passer? Yeah.
Yeah, you have one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just copying it. I put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm just getting there. My computer's acting funny because I got so many windows open. There we go. And now I've lost the chat, of course. So we got heads lead right.
Let's comment as well.
Do you want the comments in there?
Oh no, it just came from the copy and pasting. I try to take it the other way. Ends first, centers past the ocean.
Can't type today for some reason. There we go. And from there, it's just Dixie Grand.
That's the problem with terminations.
Yeah.
And the do is just for getting the flow. But it works. Good try. Well.
Now you could start a right and left grand with your opposite and say do a Dixie Grand and then do a wrong way Alaman left, and then you could do a wrong way grand.
Yep.
Anyway, and then you're into the, I wonder if you'd actually take the do pass. So
I would have another short one.
now what they, but yes, that's what you're saying. Basically, it's coming out of the Dixie Grand. You're going to go into the do pass, so left arm turn, right arm turn. and so on and so forth. I can pretty much guarantee that on most clubs that are dancing around, even at the plus level, centers past the ocean, ping pong, circulate, and roll. That's a half sashade past the ocean from the centers of an ocean wave. The ping pong, circulate with one couple half sashade, one couple not, and ending in a roll is going to cause a fair number of problems on some of the dance floors.
That's why the do-sa-do is there.
I know. I'm just letting you know.
I've got a simple one to follow Ed's rule to keep it simple for everybody. And with the isolated site, I would have a neat one. We just go to a corner box.
Yep.
Okay, whatever we can call from whatever, and then we get back to the corner box. We get a swing through.
Yep.
Boys trade. Now we all got the lady we need for the last right hand pull by to get to the partner. So what we do is an all-eight circulate, which gives us a 4 ladies chain effect into a Dixie Grand. It's a right pull by, left pull by, right, left, and there comes partner do paso. And depending on how you have set it up with the location, you either are home or you can promenade home. And that is easy to see from a corner box, getting with an ocean wave, having the boys in the middle with a 4 ladies chain effect. Whenever you can see that on the fly, you always can put that in and get in a Dixie Grand leading to a do paso.
That's good, Michael. Very good.
Thank you.
Emanations doesn't recognize courtesy turn.
Emanation doesn't like courtesy turns to do paso at all.
Really?
Yeah, those are things he's working. I could pull Colorama up to do it if you wanted, but
a nice thing I do sometimes if they're not home, they put them with a do paso into an almendar and let them turn the star. And we got the boys in the middle, and then I will boys face left twice, bend the line when they're just about ready to appear at their home spot. And it's always a big cheerio for the dancers.
Boys face left twice. That's good.
Yeah, that fixes everything. I've yet to get my dancers to do that last one that way though.
Anything else on Dixie Grand?
What's good is a lot of people are using it and using it with a lot of variety all over the world. You are absolutely correct. 99% of the time it will end in an allemande left, but it is good that there are other variations and other alterations that do go with the Dixie Grand, and you can play with it. Dixie Grand is one of those wonderful material that at the plus level, if you've got a plus group that is fairly good, maybe not that heavy dancers, that you can use Dixie Grand as workshop material, same sex in the middle. Ed's got a couple of those in the definitions, or what Michael has just put up there, into a do paso. All of these kinds of things make fantastic, very simple, very easy workshops that the dancers are quite comfortable doing, because a Dixie Grand is very comfortable to dance.
I very much like the shouting, right, left. I'm going to put that back into our dancers over here in Europe. I have never heard it before, but I think it's a great idea.
Every place I've shown it, the people instantly relate to it because they want to play caller, and they're actually what they're doing. And I jazz it up. I tell them, because there are some people in your square that may not be as bright as you, therefore, if you shout out right, left, right, you're helping the square do the call. Oh, well, then they all.
It's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're now at the top of the second hour. Ed, I want to say thank you very, very much. I've got your material there. I'll make a couple of those corrections. There is one that I posted, still has corner box listed on it. I have corrected the rest of them. So if it does say corner box, or sorry, if it does say 0 box, just remember that's also a corner box. It's the same format. I want to say thank you very much for providing all of the material and handout forms. They're great material pieces. The reason when Ed says it's only a 5-page document, it's 13, is because I've got it spaced out differently and it's in 14-point font so it can be read on the computer screen. But it's there in in PDF format. It's also in Word format. Mark will be posting those on. And as Ed has said before, he's always available to talk choreography. Send him an email. And if you've got any neat things on Dixie Grand, send them to him, because I'm quite sure we'll have another article soon from Ed on Dixie Grand after this section.
I want to thank you for setting all this up and everything. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed seeing so many of you that I've seen in the past and people I haven't met before. And it's just wonderful, just wonderful.
And thank you very, very much for coming in. Thank you, Mark Hart, for posting all of the stuff that we have on the OC Callers website, for recording and posting up the sessions for people to watch online. Oh, Mark says the files are already on the website. He'll be posting up the video. He's just finished posting them on the website, so you can download them from there. Just a reminder to everybody, I'm going in for neurosurgery on Sunday next week. So I'll be out for 2 weeks. Mark has graciously offered to host the sessions. He'll be opening up a link and sending out an email and posting it in the Newbie Callers and the Callers and Training website for anybody that wants to come in and talk choreography, go over the different things, practice the routines, such as what Ed has said, setting up contaminations or colorama, to work a lot of these definitions, to work a lot of these resolution techniques that he's talked about, taking it back to the partner line, the corner box, and anything else that you want to talk about. So Mark is going to be hosting the next 2 sessions. I'm going to see if I can sneak my computer with me when I go to the hospital, and if I'm lucky, I might be able to sneak on the following week. I don't know if Helen will be coming down from my release, but she's always threatened me. She's already threatened me with bodily harm if I try and do a Zoom session from the hospital bed. So I probably won't be. She overrules everybody here. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Ed, thank you very much. A pleasure as always. It's good to talk to you. And you still have to remind us, what is that joke that you got an entire convention groaning at? Do you remember it?
I have no idea, because my jokes are so good that everybody groans at all of them.
Yeah. Very, very true.
Yeah, all I know is there's about 8 or 9 anecdotal references about you telling a really bad dad joke at the Kansas City convention, the state convention, and nobody seems to be able to remember what it was.
I mean, I have a whole lot of these things. I just carry them anytime I need one. I mean, Mel, have you seen the? Do they have those signs like they do here in? Well, you're out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm about two and a bit hours to the nearest square dance club.
When I was in Sydney, I saw the place where the little baby clocks play. You ever seen that in Sydney, where the little baby clocks play? I didn't actually see the baby clocks playing, but I knew it was the place that they did play because the sign said, "Watch children."
Ah.
All right.
Over the years, Ed has written a lot of jokes and presented a lot of jokes. A lot of people don't realize he's actually done about 4 books. Each one is called Ed's Bad Jokes, books 1, 2, 3, and 4. He also put out a book with Ed's really good jokes, and it looked just like this.
In fact, I just heard this past couple of days ago, this Italian guy, his sister got married and she had twins, and she named the twins Denise and the nephew. All right.
You do know that resounding silence and groans only encourage him. You guys do know that, don't you?
the silence is bad. Groans are equal to laughs. I did find that in England, the jokes didn't go over as well. I had to think about them ahead of time to make sure they met English standards of humor, which is different from in the US. But
I remember, I think it was in, did you call one of the Stuttgart marathons, or was it just a big dance in Stuttgart?
I've never been in Stuttgart.
Okay, then it must have been either Frankfurt or Heidelberg then. It's where I was dancing to you, and I remember you were telling a joke and it had to be translated. And I felt sorry for the translator because it was something like, well, there was these two guys that walked into a bar. You'd think somebody would have seen it. Let's just say that was the joke. But to translate that into German took about 5 minutes. I remember you standing looking, what is he saying there?
Well, the reason in Germany, I especially told jokes. At the very start, I would tell one real quick. My rule of thumb is I want a joke no longer than 10 minutes because my job isn't being up there telling jokes, it's to be calling. But I always told one very quick joke, just kind of sloughed it in at the very start of my calling because I wanted to know what percentage of the floor understood English. So I would make this statement and I would see what percentage laughed. And that told me what percentage understood English and how much directional calling I can do and not.
I'm just wondering, because at the time I wasn't speaking German either, but I'm just wondering if you were telling the joke and the translator said, well, he's telling a joke that really doesn't make sense. Everybody just laughed politely, was the translation.
The one thing I did call, I said 8 chain 4 plus 2, and nobody did it. And it turned out, and the guy said, later told me, he said, well, we can't add. No. But they didn't know what plus 2 meant.
Unless they were round answers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know we had it way back
Oh,
then.
yeah.
Well, at least in Scandinavia, we know how to finish. So goodbye.
Well played.
Nice to see you there. You're in Sweden, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Sweden.
Gothenburg.
I thought you were in the Himalayas, Goog.
College school in Gothenburg. And Sweden was where I first became aware of the difference between dancing in Europe and in the States. I called in Sweden 3 years in a row, and I came back and wrote about it in American Square Dance magazine, and people the callers here couldn't comprehend how the level was so much different. But because I wrote about this, callers decided, well, we want to go to Europe, and they started going. Every time they came back, they said, yep, it's true, and no doubt about it.
Yep. I think I know yep.
I always thought you were up around Tibet, Guga. Mainly because Himalayan to go down right now to sleep. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh my God.
No,
Ed?
Ross is.
Yeah, and it's first of all, it's nice to meet you face to face as much as we can. But I actually learnt most of my A's from your Ed Foote Learning cassette tapes. Shows how far back.
Yeah, right.
Here in Australia. So
it was out in the late 80s, I guess, and then updated them in the 90s.
yeah, I've still got the old cassette tapes out there actually.
Are you still marketing them, Ed?
Not as cassettes.
No, as CDs or as MP3s. Are you still marketing them?
No, they're not on. What's his name? The caller was supposed to transfer them to CD. I guess he was going to transfer them to CDs, and he was going to have a Square Dance store. Who's that caller in Caller Lab? And then he went out of business. He's not doing Square Dance. He's still calling, but he's not doing the Square Dance store anymore. And he has all my stuff, and I think it was Advance was on CD, but I'm not selling them.
No, I was just wondering if you were. You can market them here. I'm all for blatant product plugs.
Well, nobody can play cassettes anyway. It would have to be the CD.
I can.
Oh, who was it? It's Rose. Did you get your diploma from going through my tapes?
I think Jeff might have finished us off, if you can call it that.
The official Ed Foote diploma. That's
Oh, no.
8x10, suitable for framing. It certifies it because you have gone through these tapes. You're a dancer to be bowed down to in the world and all this. And
Oh my God.
I told people if they get this certificate, then you can take it to a print shop and reduce it down real small, carry it in your wallet. And then if somebody says, well, what are you doing at this dance? You can just say, whip out your little certificate and say, well, here, Ed Foote says I'm the best dancer.
Well, I always tell everyone that if you're an A dancer, it doesn't mean you're a better dancer. It just means you've learnt more moves.
You know, more calls, right?
Absolutely.
That's right. I do have one question, a teaching question. We're lucky in our club, we actually have 4 callers, and that's really good in teaching because they've all got different styles and different ways of getting through to people. But I've got a query with Square Free 4. We're just teaching Square Free 4, and the definition on Caller Lab to me is right pull by as your first section, then face in or face your partner, left pull by is the second bit, and then face in, right pull by, and then left pull by and pass through. Face in and left pull by. One of our callers does it the other way, the old-fashioned way of at the end, don't turn around. So he'll go pull by, face in, first bit, and then you'll end up don't turn around at the end. And I know you've said before, if you say don't turn around, all the dancers here is turn around. So that makes them turn around. So I don't want to confuse my dancers. I've got to do the session on my own next week. So I want to teach it the Caller Lab definition. So do I just go with that? Will I confuse the dancers, or do I say to them that, well, this is another way of looking at Square Through 4? Because I don't want to put down any of my callers because they're great.
The Caller Lab definition is right pull by, quarter in, or face in, right pull by, face in, et cetera, et cetera. It has been stated that if we were rewriting square dancing today, it probably would be easier for the dancers to teach it that other way, where the first thing is right pull by, face in. Second is left pull by, face in. But it's too late. The toothpaste is out of the tube, so we can't go back. But it was suggested that that would have been a better way to present it when the call first came out.
Right.
So in your club, the
I
problem,
know John's particular on this.
the second way is people are going to be facing in when they shouldn't face in, or vice versa, and so you probably ought to go the Caller Lab way, since the whole world is doing it that way.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused here. Roz, you're saying you're teaching it right pull by, face in, left pull by, or face partner.
No.
Well, how are you?
I'm saying right pull by is the first bit. So if you said Square Through 1, right pull by, no turn.
Yeah.
If you were saying Square Through 2, you do right pull by, that's the first bit, then face in, left pull by, that's number 2.
Okay. Yeah, because the definition is pull by. Our first step is pull by. Second step is face partner, left pull by. Third step is face partner, right. Third is face partner, left.
And that's how I want to teach it.
Yeah, and a lot of people teach right pull by, face in, left pull by, face in, right pull by, face in, left pull by, go straight ahead.
Don't face in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to confuse my dancers.
That's one of the reasons why we in Europe never would choose to call Square Through 3/4, because we wouldn't know how to quarterize the square through.
Whereas we do hear a lot.
Yes, Jeff.
Jeff's got his hand up, I think.
Yeah. No, I would like to teach or show them the ending formation first. So step into the middle heads and face your corner. That's the ending. Now go back home and we'll do it. So that they know that they don't turn at that end, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm. I guess once they get the hang of it, it doesn't matter too much. But if you fractionalize it, that can make a difference.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
because you're facing the wrong way if you're
One of
taught
the
the wrong
big
way.
problems with fractionalizing movements is, for instance, swing through 1.5, or scoot back 1.5, or square through 1.5, or square through 3/4, or all those other kinds of things that you got. When movements have component parts, especially ones that are different, like square through has 4 component parts, but they're not all the same. Load the boat has component parts, but they're not all the same. And when you fractionalize it, what is 3/4 is different than what is actually mathematically 3/4 of the complete movement. So you really have to be careful when you are fractionalizing something. You show 1 part, 2, 3, 4, and on a square through, that's where it's really important, because are you square throughing 3/4? Or are you square throughing 3 hands? Is it 3/4 of a square through, or is it a square through 3 hands? And it's one of those anomalous calls that really doesn't make sense as far as the fractionalization rules go.
However, you could even at basic do a left square through 1 to a right left grand with a proper setup.
There are two basic things I tell my dancers on a square through. First of all, we count loud because we do not count on the right and left through. Because if they count loud, their subconscious helps them not on the second hand to get into a courtesy turn, which mostly the boy will start and do that, or on the 4th hand. So if they never have counted on a right and left through, it helps them on the count. It's something totally different, even though the 6 first steps are identically with the right and left through. And then I tell them if to not turn in at the ending. When we reach the final corner of our box, we're moving from one corner to the next corner. When we reach that final corner, we do not turn. We stay facing out. Yeah.
I do teach right and left grand. I do teach counting. I stress that to my lot.
I know a lot of callers that don't teach a square through first from a static square. They'll either do it in a Sicilian circle, or they'll do it from a box or facing lines, just so that you get it. But the easiest way is actually from the Sicilian circle, because they know they're going to move on to the next couple and back to back with the ones they start. Jeff, you said head step in and face your corner. That's where you're going to end up. And then all of a sudden, oh, we're doing a square through from box. Well, that's not where I'm going to end up. I'm not looking at anybody. Those kind of, and no matter where you are, you're going to get 99% of the dancers that will do it correctly. But it's that 1% of the dancers that will be the problems for the rest of the group. When you get that one that's going to say, well, that's not what you said last time. And then comes the theological seminary.
I often teach square through with half the shade couples, just to make sure that they won't try to make the courtesy turn. It doesn't help. They will do the courtesy turn whenever they get a chance.
Yeah, well, in Europe, a courtesy turn at basic, a half sashayed courtesy turn, or boy, boy, girl, girl, doing a right and left through and who turns who, is actually quite common, or at least it used to be, even though it's not in the definitions. It's not in the definitions, but it's still prompted. And here, I've heard it a couple of times prompted as a gimmick, right and left through and who turns who. But it's not commonplace to do it below the plus level as just calling it a right and left through. My personal opinion, I hate a half sashayed right and left through at any level. I don't think it should be called. It is a gimmick call. It's garbage unless you clarify it, but that's just a personal opinion, and we all know what opinions are worth. I don't like calling right and left through half sashayed at any time. But that's just me.
Looking at square through was one of those movements that's unusual within the basic program. When we start square dancing, like anything else we do in life, we would normally start from simple ideas, movements that have one section or two sections, and then we move on with complication to complex movements, which have multiple ones. Now, a square through has multiple aspects in it because we've got a right pull by, then we have a turn. That's 2 parts. We have a left pull by and a turn. That's 4 parts. We have a right pull by and a turn. That's 6 parts. And then we have another pull by. That's 7 parts. So in a square through, it's a complex movement for new dancers. I've always suggested in the classes that I've done with callers and in my own teaching that a square through in basic program, it's the last movement that I will teach in basic program. Do I as a caller need square through? No, I don't need a square through. I've got the concept of circle 4 half and a quarter more. I've got pass throughs. I've got so many other things that I can do for a square through. I don't need it. So my attitude is, why make it complex when it's not necessary? Leave square through until the dancers are really used to moving with the rest of the calls in the basic program. Then it becomes a simple teach. However, I still also use the old-fashioned way of teaching a square through. From a static square, I still get a chair and put the chair in the middle of the square. 4 sides of the chair, pass 4 sides. We do that a couple of times, eliminate the chair, and then it's always a matter of, okay, guys, we're going to do a square through again. Imagine the chair, walk around the sides of the chair. Does that stop people from courtesy turning occasionally? No, that's just the way it is. That's the way the dances are. But the later we teach it, the more easily they will grasp it and the less opportunities for screw ups there are. Just my thoughts.
Yeah,
I'm following.
I'm absolutely with Barry, and I think the distance between right and left through and square through needs to be a real big gap.
Yep.
Right.
There was a lot of callers in Germany in the 80s. The prevalence, I think it was Jim Harrington and Kim, I can't remember the names of the other ones, but they were saying
Kim Hill was one.
Kim Hill was one. Yeah, that when you do the square through, you learn to square through 2. Then you dance that a while. Then you learn to square through 3. You dance that a while. You didn't do a square through 4 until you'd done square through 2, and you dance that for a few weeks, and then you'd done a square through 3, and you danced square through 2 and square through 3, and then you did a square through 4. And you never went to that square through 4. A lot of places do square through 4 the other. And the other thing was I was told, put a chair in the center or put a $10 bill or a $20 bill in the center, and you have everybody watch it to make sure nobody steals it. Unfortunately, my dancers collectively decided that they're going to turn away, steal the bill, and they'll split it between them after the dance. So I stopped using money.
How is it done in Europe and in Australia in terms of which is taught first? Which is taught first, right and left through or square through?
I think right and left through. It depends. From my experience, right and left through, because I'll use that at my opening and open dances. I haven't taught any basic classes here, but I'll use right and left through in an open forum presentation more often than I would ever use a square through. It's usually 2 or 3 nights. Barry, Roz, you guys are teaching classes?
I'm in the middle of class. We've just finished the basic program. The last movement in the basic program I taught was square through, yet I will do a right and left through probably on the 2nd or the 3rd night of beginners class, depending upon the capability of the dancers. I like a right and left through early because I love to use it as a gimmick by saying things like, okay, we're facing the opposite couple. There are a number of parts. Step 1, give a right pull by, stop. And I say, ladies, put your left arm out beside you, hit the guy in the ribs, hit him in the chin, hit him in the chest. It does a couple of things because it stops the girl going to the right. It stops the boy doing anything else. And I'll say, boys, put your right arm around the lady's waist, courtesy, turn her around. It's a gimmick thing, and that's why I like to use it first. Anything to have a laugh with the dancers.
Yeah, well, I did the same thing when I was teaching it at the workshop with Barry, and Barry and Sue were demonstrating. I said, give a right pull by. Okay, Sue, reach out with your left. Barry, put your right hand in the middle of her back. And I said, above the belt, Barry. And he kept complaining that she wasn't wearing a belt.
That's right, yeah.
No, opposite opinion, because I try to do the right left through lastly, but square through a lot earlier, because the one thing that square through is good at, it's alternating hands, which is one thing I really like. So I try to skip the right left through. They do courtesy turns, they do wheel arounds prior to that, but the right and left through movement could wait.
I never teach right and left through. I just assign a name to a call combination they already know. I start with pass through and a courtesy turn, then I teach them a right pull by and a courtesy turn, and then call it square, and then I call it square through one courtesy turn. And they dance square through one courtesy turn for quite some time, then they dance a square through two, a square through three, and a courtesy turn. And at one point in time, I tell them a square through one and courtesy turn is nothing but a right and left through. I just never teach it.
Yeah, but I see one tough.
Hang on, Roz, you had your hand up.
Thing on that.
Yeah.
That you mix up.
I am following SSD.
Hang on a second, Michael. Roz, you had your hand up.
I am using SSD. We're trying the SSD program. So they haven't been taught right and left through. And the square through 4 or square through is on the 3rd or 4th week, I think it is.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, if I'm trying SSD, I'm sort of restricted in what I do at the moment.
That is true. What do we got? Right and left through comes in, where is it? Week 1, 2.
Because we've done pull by and wheel around, but we haven't done right and left through.
Collar Lab has right and left through to be taught before square through, and it always comes up for vote about every 5 or 7 years, and the vote is always 55 to 45.
Yeah,
55 want right and left through first, but 45 want 45% want square through first. I like square through first just to avoid the courtesy turn problem.
I do too.
It
Why create a problem if you don't need it?
Yeah, square through is lesson 4 in the SSD. Right and left through is lesson 6 in the SSD.
Yeah. So they haven't done right and left through. So. Oh, well, we'll soon find out because John's going to be there if he's well enough. He's been off sick lately. But otherwise I'm on my own and I'll just go for it. But I think I'll follow the Collar Lab way. I prefer that. And I think John likes that too.
It
makes more sense to me.
Sorry. Go ahead, Barry. And then Michael.
I have to head off. Sue's just about due home from shopping, so I'll have to help her get the stuff in from the car, because that's what I do as a loving husband.
Oh, you're a good boy.
I know. I keep on telling her how good I am. She doesn't believe me, but I keep on telling her time and time again. I've got quite a lot to do today. It's really good to see everybody. Great to see Ed again. I have to say that Ed looks just as good now as he did when I first met him 35 or 40 years ago. And I thought he looked pretty bad then.
I thought he was related to Dick Clark. I thought Ed was related to Dick Clark because he looks almost exactly the same as he did 35 years ago.
Yeah, Barry, I'm a little bit better off here because there is no shopping on Sunday here in Germany.
Michael,
all the best, guys.
Good to see you all. Something.
Bye, all.
No, I think it's all been said.
Thanks,
I'm just
Barry.
wondering with the right left through and the square through to keep that apart.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appear to be winding down. Once again, Ed, I thank you very, very much for coming in. By all means, we're hoping to get you back for a couple other things a little bit later on. If you care to join us, look at a few other things. Maybe one of these days we'll actually teach you how to do a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, see, like I told Mel, I'm lucky to turn the computer on, so I appreciate him setting all these things up for me and putting all the articles.
No worries. Once again, thank you to Mark Hart for posting that. Mark's had to step away from the computer, but he's already posted the documents up, and he'll be posting the recording up on the website So you can actually go through it with the documents, and Ed makes reference to some of the other sessions, some of the 6 examples that he's given for Dixie Grand, and some of the setups and some of the choreography and examples to use for the facing line and the 2-face line methods. They're all in the documentation that is on the OC Callers website at the moment. Once again, we're not going to be having a formal session next week or the following week on Sunday because I won't be here, but Mark Hart has graciously hosted that. And on the 10th of July, we're going to be kicking off with Eddie Powell, who's going to come and talk to us in general terms. So you want to be a square dance caller. He's the author of that book, and he's going to come and talk to us about some of that and some of the other things that go in. So it should be an interesting session. So I hope to see you all there.
Thanks,
The
Mel.
link,
Everybody.
Thank you, Mel. Take
Thank
care of
you.
yourself the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, good luck with your operation.
Yes.
Will do.
Bye-bye.
You guys take care.
Yes, Mel, recover quickly, better than I did, because I ended up back in hospital on Thursday. Had massive pain in my right arm, and it turns out I've got what they call frozen shoulder.
Oh, I've had
Oh,
that.
that's not
I've
good.
had that. Yeah.
I've had that.
Yeah.
Because I said it gave me pains in the chest, I went into emergency within a minute of going into the hospital. They took me straight in because of my heart history.
Yeah, well, I understand that a lot because I know when I was in the Army and traveling around, I used to get, it wasn't because of pain in the chest, but I used to get the cold shoulder an awful lot because I was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Don't laugh, Ed. You'll be stealing that one.
Yeah, actually, the ironic part of it was that my frozen shoulder was caused by cardiac rehab, lifting the weights up.
Okay, well, enjoyed it, everybody. Good night, and we'll.
Good night. Thank you very much, Ed.
You take
Thank
care.
you, Ed. That was really
for the
good.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thank you all. Much
Thanks a lot.
time.
Yes. Thank you for
Take care,
hosting,
everybody.
Mel, and all the prep work.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Mel,
Yes.
the invitation for next week is going to be the same link, or will we receive?
No, I've sent Mark the email,
Okay.
and hopefully he'll send the email out with the link because he can't open up Mine's a Fixed link, and I bought the program, but he'll send an email out hopefully to everybody, but also have a look on, are you on Facebook at all?
No, I've
Okay.
got Telegram.
Okay, well, if you want to send Mark an email or Yolanda an email or something like that, and they can send you the link.
Okay.
If you don't get it on Facebook, if you don't get an email by probably Friday, Yolanda, would you be okay just sending the link? If Mark
I
does
don't
it?
know how. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to forward a link.
No, you
Otherwise,
just-
I'll be.
Mickey, if she can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If you can do that, just pop it off of Facebook and send it to Michael. If anybody else has a question, just get
I'll
a
do
hold
it.
of Mark.
Okay.
I'll do it.
And
Okay.
I'm just gonna post Mark's email. So if you don't get the link, you can send him an email. So give me 1 second.
Really easy. Mark@callermark.com.
All right. All right.
There you go.
Got it. Got it. Well, and all the best to you for your surgery and your recovery.
Thank you kindly, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been a long wait, so it'd be nice to get it over with.
Been a long day. It's been a long year because it was supposed to be done as emergency surgery last September, and the neurosurgeons agreed, the insurance doctors agreed, but one of the administrative staff forgot to send a request. So 8 months later, it got denied because nobody had actually asked to have it done, even though they all agreed it needed to be done.
Well, I'm glad it got sorted out. Better
It is
late than never, right?
Yeah. I think we're getting feedback on your machine there, Yolanda.
Okay.
Anyway, you guys take care. Thank you much. And we'll see you across the Zoom or across the square sometime. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.